Roger, Mudfossil University, starting off with an apology for what you are about to hear. I was a little harsh, and I don't mean to be that way, but I am fed up with academic science intransigence. They have already decided what they will accept and will not accept. They will not challenge or scrutinize or even utter a word against my absolute proof. And you will see my absolute proof. And I was harsh, and I mean it. Okay, it's Roger, Mudfossil University, with something that is not very pretty, my friends. This is physics in action. Now listen to what they have done to Aether.
So the Higgs idea, this whole business, has to do with the origin of mass. So first, what is mass? It's something we're all quite familiar with. You know, when you push on any object, be it a rock, a Mack truck, whatever, the resistance you feel when you push on the object is the mass of the object. Now, where does the mass of the object come from? Well, clearly, it's got to come from the constituents.
All right, from the particle that is moving through space, and then something must obstruct it. That is the ether. That is what they have changed into the Higgs fields.
Particles that make up the object. But then the next question is, where does their mass come from? Especially when we're talking about fundamental particles like electrons and quarks. Where does their heft, where does their mass come from? Here is the idea, according to this Higgs approach. Imagine that space itself is filled with a kind of invisible substance.
It's called ether. All you had to do was ask Plato.
Called the Higgs field, but think of it sort of like a cosmic molasses. And then when particles like electrons, say quarks...
Let me explain to you what's happening here. As light moves through the ether, it crushes the fields that the ether particles are meant to control. They control a region around themselves. As this pushes through it, they force these away from them. Every particle of light is a negative particle. It's a negative electron. It's a particle. It is a negative particle. What does that mean? It means that all of the ether that is in space is nothing more than free electrons. Those free electrons collect on you as static. When you walk through air, you pick them up on you. Where do you think they came from? They are static that's just sitting around in the air, just doing nothing, having a nice time until somebody comes through and crushes them. Then they glow. They get hot. They are being invaded. Their regions are invaded. What happens? They are negative particles. What is this? That's a negative particle. What happens to two negative particles colliding? They push against each other. These repel this. What does that do? It creates a right-hand spin. It creates a right-hand spin coming through the ether. That is what light is, and we understand that. It's a right-hand spin. You can see it set up in the magnetic lines of flux. The light particle, which is here, is flowing through space. It's an electron. As it compresses this space, it illuminates it and creates a circular Higgs field around it. Only for an instant when it comes in at a high accelerated rate, and we have done that. We have done that. We have accelerated light, and we have crashed into the medium and displayed the Higgs fields following the boson white filament particle. And I will show this in great detail following this video.
If they're trying to move through space, they have to kind of push through this cosmic molasses, and they experience a resistance as they try to do so. It's sort of like if you throw a little pebble into a vat of molasses, you can see that the pebble is experiencing a resistance. The same would go for the particles. And that resistance, say when you push on an electron from its interactions with that surrounding Higgs molasses, would be the mass of the electron.
This is so completely obvious. And for someone to be a physicist and claim that now they have discovered this when Plato, and everyone knew this up until about 150 years ago, when it's nonsense came into physics, absolute total nonsense. And now they want to reinvent what was invented already. This happens over and over and over and over again. It is, to me, it's disgraceful.
Now, that analogy is not perfect. It might lead you to think that an electron would always be brought to rest as it experiences some friction against the molasses as it's traveling through empty space. That's not correct. This drag force only...
There is no empty space, sir. Everything that comes off of planets, off of illuminated sources, is flowing through space. They are electrons. They are not magnetic rays of nothing, and they do have a mass. Einstein was completely wrong about everything that he said, literally. If a light particle has no mass, it has no energy. That is nonsense. E equals mc squared is nonsense. If energy equals mass times the speed of light, and the mass is zero, energy is zero. So light has no energy. That's from Einstein's own lips. The speed of light is not set. That is nonsense. The speed of light slows as it hits anything that obstructs it. It's exactly what this guy is saying. And the speed of light can increase when it is put through a venturi, and we did that.
Manifests itself when the particle is trying to speed up or slow down, but it's not a bad way to think about how, according to Higgs, particles would be imbued with mass. Pushing through the ambient molasses is where the mass comes from.
Now it's just getting silly. And they gave people a Nobel Prize for this when Plato should be the one that gets the Nobel Prize. Now I'll show you the actual facts of what we have actually seen occur. When I said this ain't pretty, it ain't pretty. This is absolute plagiarism. It's literally fraud in the physics community. Now, this is a pulse red laser. These are the little particles of ether that are the free electrons that are in the air. Every single thing that's in the air is coated with electrons. There is no atoms that do not have electrons surrounding them. Electrons are ripped from these molecules and these atoms in violent interactions, and then they speed off as light and crash with ether to glow. The actual particle is right there. There's like a tiny little particle there, and I'll show you why I can prove that. This is how I can prove it. There is the particle. You see that? That's the particle right there. And it is being accelerated. That's how I can show that light can be accelerated. And it is being accelerated and stretching this wave, and it is crashing into other particles that are trying to be forced through this venturi. They're all negative. They fight each other. They glow each other. They excite each other. Back in here, the magnetic field is so unbelievable. All these electrons that are floating in space are highly excited from this reverse magnetic field created from this extreme event. That's what's going on here. Now, what happened at the venturi? They crush into each other's regions. They're forced and stripped into each other's regions. They turn into plasma. There is no fields surrounding them any longer. They are a literal block of electrons. When they come out of here, their first instinct is to get the hell away from me, get away from me. They come through here. The ones that are in the middle continue to get forced this way, forced this way. The other ones are forcing this way and forcing this way. So you get the big beam coming through the middle because there's always the force and the force. Now, what happens next? The next layer gets forced and forced this way, and that creates this band. And then they force this way and force that way. And they end up creating these stripes, which they always call the interference patterns. They have nothing to do with waves. These particles are spitting out of here, pushing each other away into stripes. And when they do, they're spinning, because that's the nature of light. It spins. The right-hand rule is fully understood. The electrons on the edges have nobody to guide them in, like in a strip, so they just spew all out into the edges. And that's why you see exactly what you see here. Completely understood when you understand that light can be accelerated and eventually accelerates anything that is particles. And these are particles, it is accelerated. Now, what else can I show you? I can show you that when it comes out of this accelerator, you end up with these little white filaments. And what are those white filaments? Those white filaments are what's called bosons. They're bosons, and they're charged particle carriers. What does that mean? It means there's a particle going zip as fast as it can go, faster than the speed of light, faster than it should go. And then what happens? It crashes into this ether, this swamp of particles. And what does it do then? It polarizes those particles. Obviously, it's a negative particle carrying through negatives that are all surrounding in the fields. They create particles that surround it in exact formations, because this particle will say, I'm a negative, you stay here, you're negative, you stay there, stay away from me, stay away from me, stay away from me, stay away from me, and they end up in these patterns. And it happens instantaneously. The central particle is unseen because it's so small it will never be seen. But it is illuminated when it crashes into the ether. This field, and these are fields, surrounding this this boson particle, charge carrier particle, has been crushed on both sides. It's flattened out. It's extremely energetic now. It's higher energy than these, as signified by its depth, its intensity, and its color. Now, what happened here? There's a white particle, which means it's highly energetic. It's giving off a tremendous amount of heat and energy. Why is it not got a field? It doesn't have a field because it's spinning backwards. That is identical to what is happening to Venus in our atmosphere. It's spinning backwards, and it's always been hot. It's much, much hotter than all the other planets because it's spinning backwards. Its day lasts for 200 days to our day. And it's scrubbing through the ether that we are flowing through. And I'm going to show you that. All right, this is an electron shower. High voltage electron, which means a high speed electron. They call them electron neutrinos, but they're actually electrons at extremely high speed. Smashes into ether at this point right here and blows it open, which we have seen, creating these Higgs bosons, which are the neutrino fields, they call them, or Cherenkov radiation. We saw Cherenkov radiation with high energy white radiations. It happens in any of these extreme interactions. It's a glowy white, which is above the white spectrum, really. And it produces the electron neutrino showers. The showers. That's what we saw. It's exactly right what they asked you for from CERN. This is what they want to see. This is a simulated Higgs boson. This is exactly what I showed. Crashing, thrown off these fields after a boson strip comes out, and at the head of them, crashing into the ether, as they slow down, they present these fields. Now this, I believe, is a high, an alpha particle, because they work in the proton ranges. I'm working with electrons, just strictly light. And you know it's light because it started from a red laser. I didn't turn it into protons. I didn't turn it into anything else. It was light when it started. It was light when it finished off, showing those Higgs bosons. And the Higgs bosons were produced because the light was accelerated. And this is the accelerator. As it starts to slow down from acceleration, it presents two of these particles in two of the fields. And I've seen them a couple of times. I'm not sure what they are, but they're very interesting. And these are the particles coming out of the accelerator. This one's extremely high energy. Drifting to the left, that means it's spinning to the right. That is the compression of the waves, and this is the beginning of the fields. And as soon as it starts to compress a little more, it'll present those Higgs fields at the front of that particle. This is the obvious nature of light. It spins. It does not wave like this. It spins like that. It's a particle. As it spins, some go that way, some come this way. The bulk of them come through the center because they're still all negatives. They're forcing each other into the center. The other ones start to line up in rows like soldiers marching. This shows the nature and the intensity of the media that it's flowing through. This is glass. That's why you see this bubble here. All it is this is the ray. This is just shock wave. It's coming through here like it's a laser beam. Everything else is shock wave. Nobody's touching these. That is compression out this way. Exactly identical to a jet fighter breaking the sound barrier. Now I'm going to leave you with this. We saw before, these are the fields. This was that white particle I said was spinning backwards. It impacted with another field here. Don't forget, these are the field presentations of a particle you will never see that's at the center. Now, what do we see happening? We see reformation of a field. This looks to me like it's taken on its own field. And what is it giving up? Something that almost looks like the beginning of the boson, a little white flash coming out, and then headed by a field. That's how these things began. They began exactly like this. Now, is this smashing into this going to create another one of these, or is this going to be a part of one of these? I'm not sure. This is the particle coming out and making its path right through here. This is the field following it. As it comes out, it starts to spin, creating these spinning fields that follow the charged particle. These are the actual polarized ether particles, which are electrons. They set up as a polar, as this particle pushes that, when you see that one lighten up, you see that one lighten up? You see they lighten up next to each particle? As they crash into the ether that's around them, there's all these particles are here. It comes and it goes, bang, get out of my way. And he pushes it and it spins it. As it comes by it, they're both negative. It spins it. So you end up with a right-hand spin. That's what a right-hand rule is. It's very, very known, fully understood, and it has unbelievable consequences in baseball even. All right, what you should do is stay in Mudfossil University, subscribe, come up here, make sure you get into this. Because here's the magnetic baseball, how baseball works right here. Venus is heated up by 2,500% recently. The Higgs fields, electrons in ether, mudfossils. We've got everything going on here for your educational needs of reality. The reality, geology, biology, anatomy, health, outer space, sciences, comets, meteors. Everything that you see here, atomic energy, free energy, ether, all of that. And there will be more and more and more coming. So stay with Mudfossil University if you want truth. And we would love for you to confront and challenge us about the facts we're presenting. But refer to the facts we present. Refer to the time that you have a discussion, an issue with, and we will discuss it. Don't just say, oh, you're crazy because you're not saying the things Einstein said, because I am saying Einstein was the one that was crazy. And anybody who listens to that nonsense is also crazy. Confront my reality, my statements, and what I put in my videos. If you will, please, any physicist on the face of the planet, any geologist, any biologist, any anatomist, come and see what we have to offer and challenge me.